We good? Okay, we good. No. In front of me, I have a 16-page script on what this video was supposed to be, but I made the grave mistake of drafting up this thing in, like, May, back when Ten Hag had barely started, and before Rannick had left, and before Richard Arnold sat down with fans, and before a single journalist linked us with Frankie de Jong. It was a much simpler time. But the point is, since I started making this video, since I started scripting it, drafting it, recording most of it, there have been some, we'll call them developments. And I thought I'd be sitting here and those developments would be us signing Marco Arnautovic or Adrian Rabiot. But instead, it's me here talking about the Glazers potentially selling the club, and us signing Casemiro today, what the hell, and us being back in for Antony, and still in for de Jong, and what is going on? In addition to that, United are 2 games into the league season, and these are their results. It's looking pretty dire, folks. United look absolute trash at the moment, and I'm recording this 3 days before we're due to face off against Liverpool, and that could and it'd be really easy for me to sit here and overreact about everything from what we've seen over the last 2 games, but the point of this video is to look at what the next 5 or 10 years are going to look like for United. And I encourage everybody watching this as well to take in this information with an open mind, just in the way that I'm delivering it to you. Because, you know, when we talk about ownership, and we'll get onto the Ratcliffe stuff at the end of the video, when you get into the ownership talk, that's the whole foundation of a club changing. And naturally, you are then talking about the long-term vision of that club, right? You're not talking about what the next 2 years are going to be. You're talking about what the next 20 will look like. And that is what this video was supposed to be, and what it will especially be now, considering that the Glazers might be leaving. And considering a big chunk of my audience might not be as familiar with these Glazers and how the structure works in football, and with Manchester United as a whole and their success over the last 30 or so years, I'm going to start from a pretty basic level. So bear with me here. And even if your ball knowledge is off the charts, you'll learn something from it. Where do I even begin with Manchester United? You know, founded in the 19th century through coal miners and all that. There's our history with the Munich tragedy and the Busby Babes, winning the Europe Cup in '68, winning the treble in '99, and then winning it again in '08, through the greatest manager of all time, through, you know, Keane and Scholes in the midfield, to Robson and Ince, all the way up to frickin' Kagawa and Carrick and Anderson and Park. You know, the history of this club is absolutely immense, and there's no team in England, and there's barely any teams in Europe that even rival that of Manchester United. But as they say, all good things must come to an end, and while this is definitely not the end of Manchester United, yet at least, it's been on a steady decline, especially for the last decade or so. It starts all the way back in 2005 when the Glazer family from the US took over this team. As you can tell, I am not a businessman, so basically all the information I'm about to deliver to you, you can find in the link in the description. There's a great Twitter thread by @SwissRamble. Just give that a read and you'll realize how terrible these people are. See, the Glazer family in 2005 took out a loan to buy Manchester United, but then they put the debt of that loan onto the club as an expense. How was that allowed? I don't know. So now that debt is now leveraged onto us, and keep in mind, before 2005, we had not ever had a single penny in debt until these Glazers came. So from the minute that the Glazer family arrived at Manchester United, we wanted them out. You'll hear a lot of people say, oh, Manchester United have only wanted the Glazers out ever since they stopped winning in 2013. That is false. They are the only ownership group in the whole Premier League to take out dividends. I can't name you a single other football team in general that does that. Since 2016, they've paid out a hefty £166 million to themselves. In short, through interest payments and loan repayments and all that, in the last almost 20 years that they've been here, we are now like over £1 billion in debt. Now keep in mind, since then, the value of the club has nearly tripled since they came. On the business side of the club, they have done great with commercializing the club on all fronts of the world, but that doesn't really matter because, well, how do I put this? We suck. They prioritize winning off the field in their business ventures with the club more than they prioritize winning on the field. You know, through football. So the Glazers took over in 2005, and things were still bad there internally, but it didn't really leak onto the pitch until I'd say about 2013, 2014, and then the 10 years since then, it's just been absolute carnage for us, resulting in last season, 2022, when we had our worst ever Premier League season in history. I'm going to give you the rundown here of what has been United's main problems over the last few years. I have 5 core issues written down here that have been holding United back for the last decade or so especially. I think if we can eradicate 3 or 4 of them, even if things aren't perfect around here, we can go back to winning a little bit. Those problems were 1, bad player development, 2, a stale style of play, 3, a terrible transfer market strategy, 4, unqualified decision makers, and of course, number 5, an over-prioritization on business. First, of course, bad player development. Can you name me a player who's come to United over the last 5 or so years and has actually improved? Maybe Bruno Fernandes. Besides that, though, you can't really, right? Even our academy players get to a point where they show a glimpse of potential, perhaps, and then they hit a wall or something, or they fade into mediocrity and are never able to climb out of it. Think of Marcus Rashford last season. I fell off a cliff. Think of Memphis Depay, Angel Di Maria, Romelu Lukaku, Alexis Sanchez, even Paul Pogba, just to name very few players who have come here and who just have not improved to save the life of them. And there are multiple reasons for this, bad coaching, favoritism, just general instability in the squad. But I think the main reason is that it is just woven into that Man United dressing room, right? That's issue number 1. Issue number 2 leads us on nicely to a stale style of play. And this one is absolutely no secret, especially over the last few years. United's tactics have been, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, they've been woeful. David Moyes never really got a time to lay out the foundation, not to say that he was really a great manager by any means at that point. And then Van Gaal Marino played way too defensively to make it at United. And then Ollie tried, but, well, we know how that went.
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's Ollie and his prop men. Bloody twat.
From the Busby Babes all the way up to Fergie's best years, United have always been known for playing the absolute best brand of football. We played just as much to entertain as we played to win, and my God, we did both very well. That's not to say that we never had good runs of form, but it was always down to, good individual performances rather than a structured, coherent, tactical system. But does that mean that it's all been the fault of crappy managers that United's been on the downfall for the last 10 years? Has it just been that we can't find a suitable replacement for Fergie and that we're still in the hunt for one? Absolutely not. Maybe for 1 or 2 tenures you can make that argument, but when you're having the same problem for almost 20 years, you really have to look beyond what's going on the pitch, right? You have to look at the people working above the manager. And a big responsibility of those people are transfers, right? Which issue number 3 leading us on to is that we have a terrible transfer market strategy. Because poor recruitment and scouting is something that we are so much worse than when it comes to how we compare to our rivals, right? Because the biggest factor that United looks for when scouting a player is their notoriety, right? Their marketability. We always go for the biggest names, even if they're getting old or have a bad injury history or don't fit in with the manager's plans. That does not matter to this team. We always go for the box office signings, even sometimes ignoring cheaper deals that managers even sometimes preferred, in turn making the team more marketable, but worse. It's why that even after all these failures for Man United, we are still valued at one of the biggest sports franchises in the world, which is cool and everything, but doesn't matter because, again, we suck. You can just take a look at last summer. We signed Rafael Varane and Jadon Sancho, 2 great players in positions that needed filling. But everybody and their mother knew that we needed a center defensive midfielder to complete the window and make it a successful one. The board, through their connections with journalists and everything, said to us that they didn't really have the money and they didn't see value in the market for a suitable CDM and that it was going to have to wait until next year. COVID and all that, whatever. Fine, the money wasn't there. But then Ronaldo becomes available and all of a sudden, the money is there. They made Ronaldo the highest paid player in the league, but of course they couldn't get a CDM because a CDM isn't as marketable as one of the best strikers in the world, right? And I'm not denying that we had a great summer in 2021, but the fact that we didn't get a CDM meant that we had to put up with McTominay and Fred last year, and, well, we all saw how that went down, right? Like, if you know ball, you know that a quality CDM is one of the most important parts to a great team. We see it with Liverpool, We see it with Man City. We saw it with Real Madrid last season. We needed that, and I'm glad we got Casemiro now, but the fact that we ignored that last season basically just threw Ollie under the bus, threw Rangnick under the bus, threw United under the bus, only because the people making these transfers just wanted to save a little bit of money, I guess, and didn't see a CDM as a good option financially. And of course, it didn't help that on top of that, we had horrible people in charge of these transfers, leading us on to issue number 4, which is of course the unqualified decision makers that we employ. I've told you already that the Glazers are absolutely incompetent, and for the simple fact that they are only in it for the money, they have to go. There's also Ed Woodward, who works right under the Glazers as our CEO, chief executive, and before coming to United, guess what he did? I'll give you a second. Was he working at Liverpool, Arsenal, maybe a big European team? He had to have experience in football, right? Great experience in football to be working at Man United. He was at JP Morgan as an accountant. In 2004, guess who he helped buy Man United? Oh, you guessed it! The only reason that Ed Woodward was here and got a place at Man United is not because of his footballing ability or knowledge. In fact, sources say that he wasn't even a fan of football until he came to United. The reason that he got the job is because he's friends with the Glazers and that they can trust him and that they know that he also prioritizes money and that he's good at what he does on a business side, but not a footballing side. And that is why, with him at the helm making all these decisions with coaches and players and transfers, all the ins and outs and who gets the contract and all that and plans for the stadium, everything, that was Ed Woodward, And obviously it was as a mouthpiece to the Glazers, but it was Ed Woodward front and center. It was Ed Woodward making the decisions. It was Ed Woodward that you had to come in and say hi to every day. That was everyone's boss, and he was absolutely incompetent. I'm on a roll today, huh? And yes, if you've been hearing me rant about the Glazers and maybe even Ed Woodward, you've been thinking, well, Julian, at least one of those groups aren't here anymore, and yes, you are right. After the whole Super League fiasco, Ed Woodward resigned as Manchester United CEO, and to replace him, we basically had a carbon copy of him. We now have Richard Arnold in his place, and maybe he seems a little bit better than Ed Woodward, but it's really just a replacement. He was already at the club before. It's really just a like-for-like replacement. And you can say the same for John Murta, our director of football as well, who just got employed last year. He's also just a little stinky. And since 2005, we have never looked to bring in specialists on board who had experience running football clubs, instead only hiring those who had connections with the Glazers or Ed Woodward. When you consider that, all the mistakes that United have made over the last decade become all the less surprising. And I guess this wasn't exclusive to our board, right? Ollie was absolutely incompetent. He only got the job because, well, he had a few good weeks and because he's a legend of the club, right? With that iconic goal at the Camp Nou in '99. For almost 3 years, we had a manager at the helm whose only Premier League experience was getting relegated with Cardiff. That's a fact. And his assistants only consisted of ex-United players with very little to no coaching experience either. It became more and more obvious by the day that none of these people, top to bottom, were ever fit for the job. And, are you surprised that we are really? And that all leads us to issue number 5, which is an over-prioritization on business. And I guess one of the few good things that the Glazers have done since they came to United was increasing our brand exposure. But for what does that matter? If I had a stake in the club or had no feelings attached to it, I guess I'd be impressed with that, but I don't want to undermine the importance of that either. But mainly I'm just a fan, and 99% of fans aren't fans of the business of Manchester United. They're in love with the club. And as the operator of a football club, your main priority should be the football club. The success on the pitch, not off of it, no matter how much money you're making. And the money that you do make should be recycled back into the club out of your pocket. Every football team has an identity, and there's no identity bigger than the one of Manchester United. But slowly but surely over the last almost 20 years, the Glazers have been slowly tearing that apart. And they do more and more so every day, with each passing day that goes by where they prioritize business. Ed Woodward famously said once on an investor's call that, quote, "Playing performance doesn't really have a meaningful impact on what we can do on the commercial side of the business," end quote. And that should tell you everything you need to know about this little hobbit. Because I can guarantee you that our owners above him felt the exact same way this whole time. Imagine some higher power came down to Joel Glazer this summer and told him that if he were to spend let's say, $300 million out of his own pocket, not the pocket of United, out of his own pocket, United would be guaranteed to win the league title this season. Do you think that he would cough up that money? Because it really shouldn't be a question. Any competent owner would. I'm sure Sheikh Mansour would. I'm sure that Newcastle's owners would. Maybe even Ted Boley would. But the Glazers, out of their own pocket, I hate to say it, but I doubt it. Like, how do you think Man City got all that money right away to start spending on players in 2008? It wasn't sitting there in their bank account, and Sheikh Mansour came and said, "Hey guys, look at all this. Why haven't we been spending all this money here?" No! Sheikh Mansour came and gave them the money to spend. But the Glazers, no. The Glazers have spent next to nothing out of their own pockets on transfers at United or anything to do with United. It's always recycled out of the club, which, by the way, are in debt because of them. This is the bottom line of the Glazers, right? They would rather save money and come second than spend more and come first. Prioritizing business and money over winning. And that reason alone is why the Glazers have to go. And maybe they could be going, I don't know. Because believe me, if we get the here we go on the Glazers selling our club, forget 99, forget 08, forget all the league titles of the 2000s, early 2010s. We are celebrating this like we have never celebrated anything before. I wouldn't know, but you get what I'm saying. I think we have to talk about Sir Jim Ratcliffe, right? It only leads us on nicely to him. So, through a spokesperson the other day, Jim Ratcliffe officially expressed his interest in buying Manchester United. Who is Jim Ratcliffe, you ask? Bloomberg Billionaires Index estimated his net worth at $28.2 billion, making him the 55th richest man in the world and second in the UK. In November 2017, Ratcliffe became the owner of FC Leipzig, a Swiss Super League team. And of course, just a couple months ago, when Roman Abramovich had to sell his shares in Chelsea, who was one of the buyers? Jim Ratcliffe. But even from a long time ago, he is a sworn Manchester United fan, and maybe him looking into buying Chelsea was just a farce for him potentially lining up a bid for United, which he has confirmed interest in. Again, I want to say that again for the people in the back. He has confirmed interest in United. Now, everybody, this can go two ways. Either the Glazers finally realize that their relationship with the fans is beyond repair, they sell to Ratcliffe for another suitable buyer, United returns the glory, and everybody, except rival fans, live happily ever after. Or the Glazers say to Ratcliffe that the club is not for sale, Ratcliffe loses interest, all suitable buyers lose interest, the Glazers keep hold of the club, they screw us even more into financial turmoil, and Man United are never back. Seriously, if the Glazers keep charge of this club, we could go bankrupt. I'm not even joking with you. I want to keep a smile on my face. I can't. We might go bankrupt if the Glazers stay for another 10 or 20 years. Even today, there was a story that the Glazers are debating about selling a percentage of their future TV deal rights that United generate just to fund future Old Trafford projects. That is absolutely ridiculous. Are we Barcelona? Are we that desperate? Now, I'm going to be honest. What is the likelihood of Ratcliffe or some other billionaire coming to United and buying out the Glazers permanently? I'm going to be realistic. All the signs have been pretty positive over the last day or two. I don't think the Glazers are selling. Let me break a few things down for you. Now, before today, our only signings had been Tyrell Malacia, Lisandro Martinez, and Christian Eriksen. Meaning, we had signed a free transfer, a backup left back, and a 5'9" center back. We had missed out on De Jong, we had missed out on Anthony, and it just seemed like the only other players that we were going to sign were Marco Arnautovic and Adrien Rabiot. Now, that has all changed over the last few days. We've gone from Adrien Rabiot and Marco Arnautovic to now being back in for Anthony and buying Casemiro in the space of 48 hours. Now, what's changed in the last few days that's made United move with such urgency? The Glazers are only greenlighting these transfer deals because they are trying to buy our silence. They don't want us to be talking about Glazers out, empty Old Trafford, Jim Ratcliffe in. They want us to be talking about the new Casemiro transfer, the new Anthony rumors, the Gakpo rumors, the De Jong rumors still. They're trying to take the attention off of themselves again, right? And they're trying to get the fans excited, but I feel like this time with a suitable buyer there, ready to purchase, that they are now backed up into a wall more than almost ever. And this is one of the best times that we've ever had to finally get these owners out of the club. But already I feel like they started with their games of trying to deflect us away. What they're trying to do is ride out the ship so that soon enough we will get the deals over the line. We'll have all these new players in. The fans will forget about how terrible these owners are. Maybe Ten Hag goes on a good run. Maybe we finish fourth or something. Sneak into the Champions League. Everybody's all positive. But then you know what happens next summer? We sign absolutely nobody and the cycle repeats. You can go down to the link in my description and read what I had planned for this script. And it was very light towards the Glazers. I didn't give them much attention because it's kind of like an issue that you can't solve, right? It's basically just redundant for me to sit up here and say the Glazers must sell. Obviously, they have to sell, but will they sell? I don't know. Now the Glazers have their hands behind their back, just like they did during the Super League situation. But the difference was with the Super League situation that there was no suitable buyer there. Now there is. Now is the time to finally get these parasites out of our club. I've also just realized I also have Erik Ten Hag in the thumbnail of this video, so I might as well talk about him. I love him, basically. I have here written the script that, maybe this is a hot take, but if Ten Hag survives his first 3 years at United, he will eventually win the league for us and take us as close to the Champions League as we've ever been in the last decade or so. I really can't tell you how happy I was when I found out this guy was going to be our manager. You can say that Erik Ten Hag lacks top-level managerial experience, only applying his trade full-time in the Netherlands. But, you know, he was an assistant under Pep at Bayern, and even his Ajax teams have been legitimate contenders in the Champions League consistently for, God, years now, right? Even when every single summer his best players would be picked off by Europe's elite clubs. You know how impressive that is, right? I mean, hey, definitely better than we've done in Europe, right? There is a reason why I'm excited for this United team. When Mourinho, when Van Gaal, when Oli took charge, all the fans collectively went, okay, this is a new United. But every single one of them had Ed Woodward operating above them. And he would make all his stupid decisions, and then within not even 3 years, we'd always be back at square one. Of course, Murta and Richard Arnold are not perfect whatsoever, but just for the simple fact that it is an upgrade over Ed Woodward, I think automatically that fills me with excitement, even if it's the Glazers above them. Even if they do prioritize money, I think Erik Ten Hag and John Murta and Richard Arnold can come in and solve at least like 3 or 4 of the problems that I mentioned on my top 5 problems at United list. If we do those, I think we have a chance of getting back to success. Maybe not success like Fergie's success, but a level of success. Especially this season, there will be bad runs of form. In fact, we are in a bad run of form right now. And that'll lead to these sensationalist claims that immediate change is needed, when in reality, there needs to be an element of patience and acceptance to this long process. The unfortunate reality is that Manchester United are not the team that they once were. And I would be delusional to say otherwise. But if you consider the changes that we've seen here recently and the absolutely monumental change that could be on its way, there is genuine reason to be optimistic about what the future could look like for this team. And I guess all there is to do now is watch it all unfold, right? I'll catch you in a bit. Ciao, everybody. Have a good one.